Welcome to another episode of Axe of the Blood God and Independent RPG Podcast. I'm your host, Kat Bailey. Joining me, as always, my lovely co-host, Nadia Oxford.
Hello, Kat. Too bad you all missed the pre-show because we were having a pretty cool, at least one-sided conversation about how when we were kids and we had the perspective of the video game industry from the West, we were all like, oh man, like Sega's gonna kill Nintendo. So Nintendo has no blast processing. And in Japan, it's like, what the hell's a Sega Master System? So just interesting how your knowledge of game history can expand as you get older, and it should.
Just ask the UK. They barely had Nintendo back in the day, and so they all became Sonic fans and say, Sonic is better than Mario.
No,
also, the ZX Spectrum.
Jetpack. It's all about Jetpack, baby.
Also joining me, my equally lovely co-host, Eric Van Allen.
And I'd tie an onion to my belt, which was the fashion at the time. I love hearing about it, though. It's fascinating.
And finally, special guest, Ken Shepard.
What up? Hello.
We are here this week to talk about Persona, specifically, how did Persona get so big? It feels like it has become one of the more influential RPGs out there, and we're going to talk about how Persona 3, Persona 4, and Persona 5 has influenced last 20 odd years of RPG history, in addition to getting some impressions of Persona 3 Reload, which is out now. We'll be getting to that in just a moment, but if you enjoy the show, thank you very much. Please leave us a review on the podcatcher of your choice. We are streaming these episodes live now on Saturdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. We have a good crowd. As always, I'm seeing people like Harvest Lunatic and Spooky Man BR and Minofsky, both the Raven. It's great to see you. It's great to have you here for our live recordings on twitch.tv/bloodgodpod. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/bloodgodpod, where we have lots of bonus episodes. We just did the Pantheon recording last night, and we talked a lot about Final Fantasy IX with our good friends Kenneth Shepard and our old pal from the editing bay, Victor Hunter. And that was a great conversation, wasn't it, Nadia?
Yes, but I don't think Kenneth Shepard was there.
I think crucially, I was not there.
Did I say Kenneth Shepard? I said
you
Ash
did,
Paulson.
and he kind of got his eyes went wide for a second there.
Like, oh, I guess I just completely forgot.
Was I there? Oh my god!
Was I involved?
About
I would say we had such a great time that I blacked out.
I've been there. Those are the best times.
It was Ash Paulson.
It was.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. Go check that out. It'll be out next Wednesday, or this coming Wednesday, I should say. And of course, check out Charlie and Dropouts. What did we talk about recently, Nadia?
What did we talk about recently? Now that you asked me, I completely blanked out, and I know that we had like a great discussion. Okay. Here we are. I remember. Basically, we're going through the Final Fantasies, starting from 1, and talking about what kind of influence they had on Final Fantasy 4 influences. So yeah, we just started with 1, and we're going to keep on going. So please listen to us. We're really cool. We also are doing, I think we are doing weekly episodes now, and one of the things we do is like Charlene Radio, which is we just kind of have a couple of songs and we talk about them and compare them to other songs, all Final Fantasy 14 related, of course. And we just have a good time. And I think that episode, our latest Charlene Dropout radio episode, is free on the free feed, the Charlene Dropouts feed. So please listen to it.
Please do listen to it. It's good stuff for all the Final Fantasy 14 conversation.
And thank you to everyone in the chat who's reminding my dumbass he talked about Final Fantasy 1, you idiot. Thank you.
Final Fantasy 1. Ash Paulson was also on that one, not Kenneth Shepard.
That's right. We had,
to my knowledge.
Yes, it was Ash, Victor, and myself, and we had a great time. And yes, there is a mention of what's his name, the dude who yells chaos. So don't worry, he does get his
chaos.
Talking about Jack,
Jack, my boy,
Jack Garland.
He just told he told Kraken to F off and punched him. Like, that was the funniest thing I've seen in a video game. That was great. And Kraken's still going on, I am Kraken, God of the Sea. Fuck you! I don't care what you are. It was pretty good. Good game. A+.
It was a good game.
It knew what it was.
It knew what it was, and it owned it. It embraced it. wrapped its arms around it. And finally, if you want merch, shop.bloodgodpod.com. Okay, time for our main topic. How did Persona 3 and 4 and 5 specifically get so big, so popular? But before we get to that, Persona 3 Reload, it's out now on various platforms. PC, I believe, PS5. Is it out on Xbox? It's out on Xbox too, right?
It's on Xbox Game Pass specifically.
Yes.
Xbox Game Pass.
Oh.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Ken Shepard, you played Persona 3 Reload.
I did.
What were your thoughts? What were your impressions? Does it hold up?
So the wild thing to me is that, like, not only does it hold up, I feel like putting, like, modern dressings on that game kind of solidified to me that Persona 3 was always the best one. And
Ooh.
it feels like 4 and 5 have, certainly iterated on it in a lot of really meaningful ways, but I think I've also learned some of the wrong lessons along the way. Because, I just recently, not recently, but like I played 5 again when Royal came out in 2020, so that's still pretty fresh in my mind. But going back and playing 3 and seeing the ways that the series kind of deviated from some of the ideas that it had made me realize how kind of formulaic 4 and 5 are comparatively. And so, yeah, replaying 3 in a more modernized sense definitely solidified for me that this had some of the best ideas that team has had in the past 20 years. And it does make me hope that revisiting it for this remake has kind of got them in a certain mindset for 6, whenever that comes out. So yeah, 2 thumbs up for me.
I think Persona 4 and 5 had the sort of the expectations of, we have to get bigger, we have to keep growing. And when I played Persona 3 Reload, the demo, there was a refreshing, brevity is the soul of wit.
Brevity is the soul of
Yeah.
it.
It felt a lot more straightforward, contained.
Yeah.
Whereas Persona 4 felt, I feel under pressure to keep growing the formula, and Persona 5 still more. Persona 5 could get downright exhausting at times. So I think Persona 3, it works really well. And I actually really like the flow of going from classes to the Tartarus. I like that it factors in fatigue as a concept in it. There's a lot that's really well done. Also, they got rid of the overt transphobia. Good job, Persona 3 Reload.
I was playing some of it last night, and at first I remember remarking that, like, it's weird to go back to having just 3 characteristics to focus on, and it felt very, like, narrow in scope, like you were saying, compared to something like P5, but there's something about the world and the vibes of P3 that are so unmatched even today. I love the art style of it. I feel like Reload did a very good job of maintaining the way that game looks and the way that game feels without, making it look better without losing what made Persona 3 Persona 3. And I think one of the biggest things that I remember was playing a battle, and they taught me how to do the whole, it's basically baton pass, right? Where you do the shift to other characters. And not only is that a great addition to the battle system, and for once I actually like the P3 battle system, because I never liked the one where you couldn't control your party members. That was just a bad time every time. But now, when I was doing the shift, there's so much good style in this game that they definitely added more onto P3, but the scenes where it cuts to close-ups of their faces, like communicating with each other as they shift, being like, okay, it's your turn, yeah, I got it, and stuff like that. Or when they do their persona and you get like the sick flat screen drop behind them and it shatters into glass as their persona erupts after they pull the trigger, and it's like, oh, game is so stylish. It's got style, and does make me really excited for what they do with the P6, because also playing this game running at like a smooth buttery 60 on my gaming computer owns. It's so good.
Yeah, I love that. We weren't really able to play Persona 3 for so long because it was trapped on the PlayStation 2, and then finally it came out on more modern platforms, but it was P3 Portable that came out. I think my only disappointment with Reload is that, of course, it doesn't have Girls' Side, which I think should be the canonical side. of the game, but whatever, shrug, I guess.
Mhm.
I think the stylization is interesting because I think it looks really good without being overbearing,
Mhm.
which love Persona 5. It gets to be a lot. Also, the blue is not as hard on the eyes as the red and the
Yeah,
black.
Mhm.
I agree.
Yeah.
As much as I love red and black, blue is a much more soothing color. It's a lot
Mhm.
more haunting too.
Yeah. And I definitely think even as the spin-offs have been coming out, like they've leaned so hard into the aesthetic of Persona 5 that and they've been iterating that so much in like Strikers or Tactica, it definitely feels like they needed to rein that in a little bit. And I think 3 is like the kind of perfect marriage of that very like stylized, style, for lack of a better term. And also I guess like the more muted sort of sensibilities of original Persona 3.
Mm.
Because I think if they kept escalating, I think it would have gotten kind of beyond the scope of what people even like about Persona 3. Which again is why like it's interesting to go back and see them kind of learn things from 5, but make sure that it is appropriate for 3 in the same way.
Right.
Was 3 always your first one? Is this your first time playing 3? I should ask.
Me? Oh no.
Yeah.
I played 3 for the first time with portable. So it's been almost 12 years since I actually played
Okay.
the full game. Because I've
Wow,
gone
it's
back and
been
like
a while.
I played the answer with Fez, and so it's like I've at least been more acquainted with that recently. But in terms of actually like going from beginning to end, this is the first time I've done it in almost a decade, which again was like, oh man, this holds up way better than I would have thought it would. And a lot of that is to some of the lessons that I think it has learned from 4 and 5 in terms of like really fleshing out a lot of the social links and such. Because like I don't feel like the game gets enough credit for a lot of the new stuff that is added in the remaking process. Because the social stuff with the male party members who did not have social links in the original game for the male protagonist, probably the best written stuff in like the pantheon of Persona 3. Um, and it makes it really jarring to play some of the older stuff that has not really been retooled because it's like it's a major bummer to go through some of the female party members' social links and be like, oh, this has not been touched in almost 20 years, and it does not it kind of like very surface level. In spite of 4 and 5, like the social links are like the bread and butter of those games. What a lot of people really
Right.
remember from them, and so it's like you see that okay, this was their first swing at this, and they were still kind of figuring out how to balance it both within the writing, but also in like how it weaves into combat and making personas, and uh, so yeah, like it definitely shows age in that way, but a lot of the stuff that they've added since I think shows that as much as they're trying to kind of be this very faithful remake, they have done a lot to make up for some of the mistakes of the old game.
Hmm. I'm curious, Eric, is this your first time playing Persona 3?
It's my first time playing Persona 3 all the way through. So
Okay.
I have a
Did you already
weird
finish it?
no.
No,
I
okay.
did not get early
But you're going
code
to
or
do it. You're
anything.
going for it.
I would like to finish it because I have a feeling that if I finish Persona 3, it will become my favorite Persona. It just has all the right
Interesting.
vibes. It like its cast appeals way more to me. I think it's even its setting. I saw someone asking in chat about whether Persona 3 is set in the same time period, and it is still like late 2000s, so like 2009, which for me, fun fact, that was when I was in high school. And it
Fun
feels
fact.
very nostalgic to me for that reason because there are characters that walk around
That's what
with
I'm
what
thinking.
are like obviously knockoff Motorola razors like
Yeah.
and the music feels very nostalgic to me, and even I was telling Ken this last night. I love that so many of the social links end with a character being like, "Oh, I'm going to miss my show," and like take off. And I was like, "Oh, right. Shows used
Mhm.
to be a thing that came on TV at certain points in time, and
Oh.
unless you recorded them,
Oh,
you missed them." Right. That was
good
a
concept.
whimsical time.
There's a
Yes,
Um,
whole shop for
long
renting
ago.
CDs.
yeah.
Ancient times.
But so I have played Persona 3 Portable on the Vita. I think I got up to it was around the point where you meet Aegis. So I think it was like June or July, I want to say, is when that was. So it's not very far into the game. I'm already almost halfway there in P3 Reload. And I remember liking it a lot, but disliking aspects of Portable that were making it difficult for me to keep going. As much as I like some of the art and stuff around the way you move around the map in Portable, I just didn't have a sense of place. I felt like I was just kind of looking at menus over and over again, and it made social links feel very dry and very just not interesting to me, and that was going to be the thing. So when most of my time with Portable was spent just running Tartarus, I was like, is this really what P3 is? Is this like what people go gaga for? And I was also like much less into the vibes of a lot of that stuff when I first played it. I think not only am I more receptive to the vibes this time, but I do think moving it into a 3D space and just making that like the world of P3 is kind of weird. It's kind of goofy in a way. Like it feels eerie. Like you're going to a school that's on an island that they're like, oh, it's man-made. It's like very unnatural, and they keep emphasizing like how unnatural all of the things are here. And as much as I like rural ghost story in P4 and city story in P5, there's something about like creepy, almost like I'm in the middle of like an internet copy past P3 that like really appeals
Candle
to me.
Cove.
Yeah.
Kids go. That's the name of the school they go to, Candle Cove.
So yeah, this is going to be my first time all the way through P3. I'm going to finish it by the end of this year, I promise. And
Oh, that's so far away.
I know.
There's
We're already a month in, though. We're already 1 month done with 2024.
Stop saying that.
Nah, started yesterday. Shut up.
There's a lot to love about Persona 3. I like the conceit of the midnight hour. It's very creepy when everybody gets turned into coffins and everything.
Oh, yeah.
I like being able to go to the Tartarus anytime and continue climbing up. There's a real pressure and stress of like, how far can I get? Like, you'll keep wanting to go. It feels a lot more contrived in Persona 4 in terms of how the actual dungeons work. That was like one of my least favorite aspects of it. Persona 3, you're climbing up the tower. It can get a little repetitive and such, but there is an intensity to it, especially as the enemies get more challenging. And I love the mystery of, but what the heck is at the top of this thing? There is something pulling you to the top of it.
Probably God.
And then I love that when you get to the actual like full moon, which feels like a little bit of a ticking clock, you know something bad's going to happen. What's going to happen next? So
that's
I
very
think,
SMT too. The idea of the moon still being implemented into the gameplay.
Yeah.
It works really well, I think. Yeah. It has a dog as a dog character. Who doesn't love that? So I think there's a clarity of vision in Persona 3 that works really well. But how did Persona get so big? How did we get to this point? Well, let's rewind a little bit to the year 2007. Yeah. What's happening in 2007? 2007 was the year of the Wii. It was the year of Call of Duty Modern Warfare. A lot of people would say that 2007 was one of the best years ever for video games. We got Mirror's Edge, Halo 3, the Orange Box.
That was a good year.
You, if you like shooters, 2007 was it.
That was Portal as well. Like that was I remember writing that year, and that was one of the years that actually I really worked on building up my my portfolio, because there was so much to write about. Mobile games were starting to kind of become a thing. I don't know if the iPhone was out by then, but it was.
That was the year that iPhone was out.
So you were like even looking at like, you know, little games like Doodle Jump and what have you. Like there was a lot of potential going on in the games industry, and it's funny, we've talked a million times about how it was, you know, the dark periods for RPGs. We were kind of starting to enter that period despite Persona.
The PlayStation 2 was still alive and kicking at this time, despite all of the, at the time, new consoles being out. And a little game called Persona came out. And it came out at a unique time for the games industry, because Japanese developed games specifically were a little bit on the wane. People's attitudes toward turn-based RPGs were starting to shift. But Persona 3 was so unabashedly Japanese, first of all, set in clearly modern Japan. It was all about being in a Japanese high school, going and hanging out in malls, etc., having friendships. It really immersed you in that. It was also unabashedly anime at a time when it was a little uncool to be anime. I think everybody was going browns and grays, browns and grays, browns and grays. You wanted to get very, shall we say, mature. Mature was brown and gray. And Persona was colorful. It was bursting with color and personality. So it really stood out, and it very quickly got a cult audience. Nadia, at the time, you and I were in Jeremy Parish's Talking Time forum. That was the first time I ever heard of the Persona series.
Yeah.
And it was a very popular gift that everybody was exchanging at the time.
I never got the Persona 3. You
never got the Persona 3
no.
gift.
But I do remember hearing people talk about this game where kids shoot themselves in the head. I'm like, that seems a little edgelord extreme, but okay.
Yeah.
So I never played it. I still haven't, actually. I'm getting to it.
I had P3 at the time introduced to me the exact same way, where a friend of mine was just like, dude, I've been playing this game lately. It's like at a school and you have a gun and you shoot yourself and then magic comes out. And, I was like, and he like never... Content warning for this episode, by the way. He like
Please don't demonetize us.
He like never elaborated past that, which was weird to me. Like if he had kept going, maybe I would have heard him out, but that was always like where the water stopped with that.
Yeah.
I was like, yo, it's wild. And I was like, okay, cool, bud.
You
I'm gonna
shoot
go back
yourself
to
with a gun and
playing.
magic
Very
comes
long
out.
toke. And they were like, oh, it's wild, man.
I'm gonna go back to playing COD and Rock Band now. You have fun with that. And then years later,
That's right,
I'd
Rock
be
Band
sitting
was
there
huge.
playing P3 Portable and being like, oh, this was that game he was talking about.
Oh, the one where the kids shoot themselves and the magic comes out.
I mean, that was the
Magic
mentality
comes
at the
out.
time. That was the mentality at the time, right? Where it was just, Japanese games are so weird, LOL.
Let's take it to
Yeah.
G4. Take it away, Morgan.
Yeah. No, exactly. There's like, look, what crazy thing will Japan think of next? LOL. So Persona 3 comes out, Persona 3 Fez comes out. The PS2 keeps going because Japan was fairly slow to move on to HD consoles at the time for a myriad of reasons.
Yeah.
Persona 4 comes out in 2008. And at the time, Persona 4, I think, was maybe a little more lightly received than it is now. I think a lot of people are saying, well, this one's very yellow. This one's yellow.
Yeah.
It's just more Persona 3. I don't know. But it continued to build up its audience. And then, weirdly, you don't say this very often about the PlayStation Vita. P4 Golden comes out in 2012. And it kind of was a system seller. People were really like, I got to get a Vita for PlayStation Persona 4 Golden. That was when I finished it for the first time. Loved it. Had an amazing time. Feel a little more rough about it in hindsight for a variety of reasons. But at the time, I just loved it so much. And then I made you, Nadia, play Persona 4 Golden.
Yeah.
As part of the Persona 4 Golden report back in like
Yeah, that's right. If
2017.
you want to go back and listen to those episodes, that's me playing through Persona 4, and I played through that and Persona 5 at the same time. I distinctly remember that. And for me, I think as someone who did not pay much attention to Persona, because as Eric said, the water stopped when I heard about kids shooting themselves and magic coming out. I did kind of notice Persona 4, because that's when memes started to kind of become a thing, and people were sharing. Do you remember Hi, I'm Daisy's Persona 4 comics? Yes. They're hilarious. I still quote them all the time, and I think they get quoted in the games actually now. But
when Eric was here in New York last week, I made him and Michael Hyam watch it in my apartment on my TV.
Sorry about that.
That shit still holds up better than the actual game does.
Yeah, it really does. Like, I can't remember what I was. Everyone in this room is a whore. Now take a chastity belt and sit down. I can still think about that.
Oh, it's so good.
So that kind of made me say, okay, this game looks really amusing. And then Persona 5 comes around, and by now, social media, you can't ignore it, no matter how hard you try. And what kind of got me into it was everyone was memeing, you never see it coming. Like, and there was someone who did that with, like, Mo saying, say some guy's dissing your fly girl, just give him one of these. You never see him coming. And then, and that just made me die. So, Yeah, memes sell things now, apparently. Congratulations, capitalism.
I mean,
You've won.
yes.
A+.
What are memes if not a perfectly packaged little bit of commercialism delivered straight to your doorstep? But Persona 4 Golden, I think, continued to build up the cult audience. It looked so good on that OLED screen on the Vita. It was absolutely gorgeous. We had gotten Persona 3 Portable on the PSP, but it felt like it was a little bit of a step back in some ways, because you didn't have the fully explorable world. It was almost more visual novel-y in the way that you had the menus that you would be clicking on and everything. It was still great. I was still enjoying it on the PSP, but playing this much more fleshed out and arguably far superior version, because it added a lot. Golden added a lot. Whole new character, basically an entire postscript after the main game finished. New and very interesting social links. I think P4 Golden dramatically enhanced Persona. Also, I think that was I think the original Persona 4 didn't allow you to control your party members, so it was kind of a big deal.
Oh, that would suck. I romanced what's her name? The new chick.
Marie.
Shoot.
Tell me if I'm wrong,
Marie.
by the way. Tell me if I'm wrong on that. Please correct me, chat.
4, I believe you could always control your party. It was 3 that had the issue where you couldn't control your party until portable.
Yeah, base P3 was always like someone would get Marin Karined, and it was just like the most annoying thing in the world to try and take care of, especially if your protagonist got charmed. It is weird because I feel like P4 Golden was that moment of a lot of people probably bought a Vita, had a Vita, didn't have much to play on said Vita. You had like the one Uncharted game and Freedom Wars, and that was your
Freedom
Vita
Wars.
library.
Oh my god.
Shout outs to Freedom Wars. I still got that on my shelf over there. But you wanted games to play for your Vita, and here's this big beefy. I don't say this to disparage Persona. I say it because it's probably what a big selling point it was, that here's this game that you can play for like 80 hours on your Vita. You're like guaranteed 80 hours of Vita time at a time when, again, Freedom Wars was kind of the only game in town for that. So here's this other option, and then people get into it and they're like, oh, Persona's got some ideas. Persona's doing some stuff. It's got a lot of stuff that people maybe had not seen before. Your sorts of like your social sim things that were very Sakura Wars, very Tokimeki, but we hadn't seen become popular over here. And then it just caught fire. And now, like, I think P5 also benefited greatly from the era of social media. And I do think, Nadia, you were saying memes. I absolutely think social media broadly, word of mouth, memes, fan art, that sort of thing, was a huge reason why P5 in particular took off.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for a long time, nothing happened. We were waiting for Persona 5 for so long. It was pretty much my most anticipated game for years. We were like, where the heck is it? There was nothing. Behind the scenes, it was kind of a very different concept, and went through some changes. And then the 2010 earthquake happened in Japan,
right? Yeah,
and they basically scrapped and restarted in a lot of ways and started moving in the direction that we did. And yet we did not get Persona 5 in Japan until 2016. It was delayed repeatedly. Finally came out in 2017, and in so many ways. It was perfectly timed because the younger set of millennials who had come of age watching anime came of age, and like Eric, maybe you can like, I don't want a millennial explain here, but I think that just having an entire age group that had grown up on anime was a big deal. It had the Demon Soul effect, where there was huge word of mouth around this game that made a lot of people like be paying attention to it. It was on a mainstream console on the PlayStation 4. It was a console exclusive at the time. So everything was set up, I think, for Persona 5 to succeed. And then there was that little dash of controversy, because Persona 3 and Persona 4 had amazing localizations, great writing. Because Persona 5 was so big, and Atlas was very, very small. Frankly, the editing was kind of sloppy. The localization wasn't as good. And so there was like a whole ass website going, why Persona 5's localization sucks and stuff like that. But if anything, it only served to keep Persona 5 in the mind's eye. It did not necessarily detract from its popularity. And despite some controversy over story content and whatnot, I think Persona 5 remains the most popular, and its influence cannot be denied. You're seeing games like Honkai Star Rail and stuff. The battle system has become a very popular way to just implement into various RPGs and stuff. So at this point, Persona is, I would say, quite popular. I think Persona 6 will be a huge deal when it comes out.
I think so, yeah.
One of the more influential RPGs out there. So how did we get to this point?
I do think it's Persona 5 launching it into the stratosphere because, like, as we kind of laid out on the timeline, even up through P4 Golden, it was still a relatively niche RPG series. And they're kind of like two factors I'll point at. One is the opening of Persona 5 might be one of the best like pre-release things any game has ever put out ever, because that opening of just the little dun 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 and all that, and like them jumping through the city and skating down the freeway and all that, like I don't know that there's a piece of pre-launch gaming content that I've rewatched more than that. I have watched that opening so many times. I will watch it again many times because it's such a distinct slice of, yeah, I want to play whatever this is. Like, this is great. I love everything that's happening here. The P5 also came out at a time when there was a massive, I think, resurgence of desire for RPGs, and I think this is something that has been growing. And even then, I don't think it was it's not ultimately going to reap the benefits the way that, say, Baldur's Gate 3 and FF7 have, but like there was a rising love of the single player RPG that was surging back after ye dark times in the Xbox 360 era. And I would say that Persona 5 was a major reason why that wave was happening in the first place. And it culminates in like Jokers and Smash. I don't think we can like discount the fact that there is a P5 character that is a playable character in Super Smash Bros. Like, having a character in Super Smash Bros. Is basically saying, like, you deserve to be on the Mount Rushmore of video games. Like, you are an all-time character, like, preserved next to Pac-Man
and that was a
Mega
fun
Man
reveal,
Mario.
too.
Oh,
yeah, that was probably the funnest thing that's happened at the Game Awards.
Yeah. So all that being, like, P5 was a breakthrough. I know we talk here on Axe of the Blood God about a lot of different RPG series that have their breakthrough moments. So you have like Fire Emblem with Awakening and Three Houses and things like that. I don't think any series has had a larger breakthrough than P5. It is cannot be quantified, frankly.
I agree. And Persona, it's funny because it's gotten to the point where a lot of RPG fans have started to find Persona 3, 4, and 5's success obnoxious. There's certainly a large contingent of Shin Megami Tensei fans who are saying, shut the F up about Persona 3, 4, and 5. Not every game needs to be a damn high school game.
Yeah, it's interesting. Oh, go ahead.
No, you.
I was going to say, it is interesting being kind of like inundated in the fandom of Persona and watching that unfold, because like, yes, there is sort of like narrative that Atlas has forgotten Persona 1 and 2. The Shin Megami Tensei like branding is no longer on any of these games. And something that is also, and we kind of like glossed over it in the timeline, is that like in the midst of all of these games coming out, there's been like this massive inundation in spin-offs, in anime adaptations and manga adaptations, where like Atlas leans so hard into those three games very specifically in a way that feels like, if you are, a hardcore person that's been here since the 90s, you're kind of like, oh, I feel like my faves are kind of, what's that meme of like the parent holding the kid in the pool, one kid's crying, and then there's somebody like down, like the skeletons in the underwater. It's sort of that feeling. And I think, speaking personally, there was a point in my life where I think I was willing to just lap up whatever Atlas put in front of me, I was like, yes, I will take all of these Persona games. I'll take a fighting game. I'll take a dancing game. I'll take a tactics game, a Muso game, but I think in spite of Persona 5, really being this breakthrough moment, I also feel like we are starting to reach peak Persona 5 like fatigue. And that is something that is, again, like, it's just interesting to go back to Persona 3 after all this time and kind of feel like we have this very, like, stripped down is not the word I want to use, but like just like this much more concise sort of vision of what this series can be and should be. And that's just like what makes going back to that game after all of this other nonsense. Again, like I feel like I'm disparaging the spinoffs in a way, which I don't mean to do, because I love most of those games. But it definitely feels like it's starting to get out of Atlus's control, just how big this has gotten. And so I do hope moving forward some lessons have been learned about sort of scope and inundation, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about Persona 1 and 2, which I think would drive a certain crowd of RPG fans nuts. The original Persona just isn't that good. Sorry.
I've tried multiple times to play that game.
They put it on the PlayStation Classic too, which was like a weird move.
It's Persona 2 is the one that I actually want to sit down one day and like get through, because every time I've read about it, seen it, dabbled in it, I'm like, this also seems like it's got some vibes that are very unique and different.
It's less accessible than Persona 3 at this point, because it's only available on the PlayStation and the PlayStation Portable. And one half of the duology was supposed to come out and had localization problems. That was the Eternal Punishment. So as a result, I think we only got Innocent Sin. If anything, it would be really great if Atlus found a way to make Persona 2 more accessible and bring it kind of into the modern era somewhat. I'm not saying turn it into Persona 3, 4, and 5, but I think you just have to be in a very particular mindset to be able to enjoy Persona 2 at this point. So it's no surprise to me that Persona 3, 4, and 5 are kind of sucking up all the oxygen. Another thing that I think is very notable is I think Persona has kind of filled the gap that was left by Final Fantasy in some respects, because Final Fantasy used to be a pretty regular appearance series, and then I'm not going to say it fell on hard times. If anything, I think Final Fantasy continues to outsell Persona pretty handily, actually. We're talking about like Persona 5 had a few million, and like Final Fantasy 15 had like 10 million. But in the mind share, I think that Persona 5's Q rating, as it were, has grown, and Final Fantasy has maybe like fallen off a little bit. But of course, only one of them has a very popular MMORPG that can be played for free for X amount of months, and also includes the award-winning expansion Heavensward.
And no, Stormblood.
And
get your meme up to date here.
Did I do it right?
Yes. No. Well, enough. You got there. I do think it's important to note, though, that during this time, Final Fantasy had one entry that was an MMO, one that was in development for ages and ages. 13 was good, also notoriously controversial depending on your opinion of RPGs and Final Fantasy in general. And then by 16 we have the whole "is it even an RPG" thing, silliness. But what I will say is that Persona not just captures a single player RPG crowd, but it captures a different kind of single player crowd altogether, because I think about the rise of things like Stardew Valley and the appeal that Stardew has, and a lot of that overlaps with what makes Persona special, because even playing P3 Reload, I'm going, there are times when I spend like an hour just getting through the floors of Tartarus that I have open to me, and I'm playing what feels like a very traditional RPG dungeon crawler. And then I'm spending the next 3 to 4 hours doing. Do I have it? Yeah. Okay. I made a schedule for P3R of when different things are open during the week, so that way I can remember, like, okay, I can only work at the cafe Monday through Wednesday.
It's very millennial core of you.
Yeah, so if I want to, like, get my charm and courage up, I gotta go work there then. And like it has activated a different part of my brain entirely than honestly most other RPGs do. I can't, like, I have to go to things like Princess Maker or Tokimeki Memorial or like
Princess
Sakura
Maker.
Wars. Like I'd have to go there for this sort of like management layer that not a ton of RPGs get into, but that like farming sims or life sims absolutely love. And Persona found a way to like bridge that and bring that together, and that is what I think marks like Persona as different from most other RPGs out there. And it's also why I think so many people manage to get into it even if they're not a huge RPG fan, is because like the RPG is really maybe only like 30 to 50% of the pie when it comes to Persona, and the other half is like life sim, management sim stuff. You want that calendar and that, how am I spending my day? Who am I spending it with? Where are my social links at? Who am I talking to? When's that part-time job available? I got to get my courage up and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it really like taps into a different audience that gives it something that most RPGs don't have.
Princess Maker 2 Pantheon, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring Sharky in for that. Sharky and Parrish. That's some real 90s shit going on here.
I do like the horror vibes of Persona 3. It feels more connected to the sort of the vibes of Shin Megami Tensei in general. In the Discord, JB was pointing out that Persona 2 has heavier horror vibes, much heavier than Persona 3 even. It's interesting to see how over time it has transitioned to something more overtly political, I would argue. They've de-emphasized the horror vibes in a time when horror is actually more popular than ever.
Horror's everywhere now. Who needs a video game?
Ooh, indeed.
Life is a jump scare.
I do think 2-3's credit specifically in terms of like tone and theme, it feels the most consistent, I think, of all of the games in terms of like I think 4 and 5, like yes, they're definitely more politically leaning in terms of what they're talking about, but I also feel like that has given the series a lot of rakes to step on in the process. Where 3 feels like just more like has like a longer understanding of what it wants to say throughout its runtime, as opposed to having these moments where like 5 says, like proclaims to be about one thing and then ends up kind of undermining itself multiple times throughout. Which I think is, localization has tried to do some stuff to kind of make it more palatable. And I think that is something that is interesting to go back to 3 with Reload and see how localization wasn't even the source of some of those changes, but like just from the ground up, they were like, hey, we want to kind of be more cognizant of what we are saying about different types of people and expressing things in our world, to the point where like if they were to make like a 4 remake, I feel like they would have to change large swaths of that video game in ways that I don't think we'll ever see happen. But yeah, like it's been interesting to see how like a change in tone means like a kind of like complete recontextualization of how you talk about things, both in terms of the supernatural threat to the world, but also just like everyday life. Yeah.
I do think that's something that P4 has that I wish for, if we're talking about what we want for a P6. I love the setting of P4. I love the idea that it's in like a rural part. It's almost got like a Boko no Natsuyasumi vibe to it, where you're kind of like out in a less like city like area. P3 and P5 are very city life, and that's cool. Yeah. But I like that P4 has that sort of small town rural vibe, and I would like to see that again. I'd like to see them tackle it, maybe with some lessons learned and better dungeon layouts than P4. But I do really like some of the stories they were able to get into with characters like Yukiko in P4, and I would like to see them tackle that again with, new knowledge, new team, and really like try and tell that sort of story. Because I think if P6 comes out and it feels too similar to P5, then that Persona fatigue you talked about, Ken, is going to really hit. It's going to hit like a truck.
Maybe. Persona 4 is a weird one for me because I love the setting, as you said, and I think I think it's my favorite setting out of Persona 3, 4, and 5. And I really love a lot of the characters in it, specifically Yukiko and Chie. I just find them delightful on a moment-to-moment basis, and the writing in that game really sparkles a lot of the time. I just more and more how it handles LGBT issues bums me out so spectacularly that
Yeah.
I can almost that it completely derails the entire what is otherwise an amazingly enjoyable game. And
Right.
anybody who's listened to this podcast for the past almost 10 years will have heard me talk about
Right.
this a lot. I think we did a whole episode on it, if anything. But
Oh yeah, we've done probably like several billion episodes on Persona 4 and like talked about its problems because yes, it has several.
boy, am I conflicted about it. In other words,
Good fishing though,
And-
great fishing game.
great
I can
fishing
give it
game.
that.
And I do want to say, like, without getting into spoilers, but to Persona 3 Reload's credit, it feels like the team that is behind that is trying to, within the confines of like an already established story that they maybe can't fuck with that much, it's trying to like have these little hints that things are maybe better moving forward. To the point where like I'm not like confident that Persona 6 is gonna like finally do right by queer people, but I do have more hope than I have in the past decade or so of me playing these games. Because between that and Tactica having some like pretty overt queer stuff, maybe that team's just in a better place now. Now that certain
hope so.
people at the top are no longer working on that and are working on other things.
Yeah, a lot of the original team went on to Metaphor Refantagio, so I look forward to really problematic stuff in that one.
Mhm.
Oh boy, gay jokes.
So, Ken, would you say that Persona 3 Reload is a good entry point for people who are just discovering the series for the first time? And is it the best Persona?
Yes and yes, I think.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of talk about whether or not Persona 3 Reload is the definitive edition of the game, because more so than 4 and 5, it has all these different variations, but they don't all like. There's been no place where all of the content has been housed in one game.
Yeah.
And Reload is still not that. Although there are, as of when we're recording, there are rumors that the answer, like the playable epilogue that was in Fez, is going to be added as DLC. And I think that even since the game has come out, there's been some kind of like data mining that heavily implies it as well. But even without that, I still think Reload is probably the best told version of that story. And so I think for that reason, it is both a good entry point and also just like the best way to experience this game right now. So as for whether it is the best Persona, I still think, yeah, I think this solidified it for me. And I have a lot of love for 5. I've even got a Ryuji tattoo, so like I'm not just like making this up. But I do think like I had been kind of like going back and forth between which of the two I preferred, and then just kind of like playing Reload with all these sort of like modern dressings and sprucing up and kind of like sanding off some of the edges, the rough edges rather. I think it just kind of solidified this is exactly the game I want this team to be looking at when it is working on its next game, and is kind of like looking for lessons that it has learned over the past 20 years. Because I don't think that 4 and 5 learned all the right lessons along the way. I think, like I said, like however long we've been here, I think those games did end up taking some of the wrong lessons away and have kind of become formulaic, and that's why even going back, Persona 3 just feels very refreshing after all this time.
Oh, and JB wants to know, how does Persona 3 Remake handle Operation Babe Hunt?
So if you go to Kotaku.com, no, okay, so it still exists. They named it something different. I don't remember what it was, but for some reason people were very upset about that specifically. But you still go around during the beach scene and you go hit on women. Although like they did give me a lot of dialogue options to kind of like derail it and kind of be like the sand of the microchip of Junpei's elaborate plan. But then there is the scene that was notoriously transphobic in the original, where trans panic happens and the boys run away, and instead they just kind of like retooled that entire scene to be the woman is actually like a delusional conspiracy theorist who thinks the sun was replaced in the 80s. And then they're like, well, this is fucking weird, and so they run away. So like, again, like I said earlier, like it feels like they are still kind of operating within the confines of a game that's already what it is, and they are trying to make things better without necessarily going like what I think would have been a braver step to fix some of these issues, but like it is better than it has been in every other variation of the game.
As an 80s kid, I can confirm the sun was indeed replaced. Like,
Well,
big moon is hiding it, but it's true.
well, if you want to protect yourself from the sun's rays, you got to go find that woman and pay 300,000 yen to get this really special sunscreen that she has.
How can I lose?
I mean, yeah, win-win.
Yeah, I mean that's to protect me against the rays of the Jew sun or whatever they think it is. Like, it's a good. I'm allowed to say that. It's a good deal. Sorry, Eric.
I just heard, like, instead of black hole sun, fake Jew sun, won't you come?
Fake Jew sun, won't you come?
Oh God.
Oh.
As for the Persona series, there's no doubt that it is more popular than ever, and I think Persona 3 Reload is emblematic of that. So that's available now. Go check it out. I'll be checking it out. Maybe I'll check it out. Maybe I'll try and do that play Persona 3 every day thing again that I attempted in 2022 and completely failed at because I went on
It's coming back.
this week in Persona 3. My problem is that I went on like a 2-week vacation to the British Virgin Islands that I didn't bring my Vita with me, and that was kind of hard to pick it up after that. So, but in any event, Persona 3 Reload. Share your thoughts. Want to talk about it with us in the Discord. We want to hear what you think. Okay, time now for a series of random encounters. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is the fastest selling game in the series to date. So, but at the same time, Sega of America laid off 61 employees in the continued trend toward layoffs. Though apparently the unionization has helped make the negotiations for the layoffs. So the small silver lining, perhaps. Citizen Sleeper 2 has around a year left in development. So that's Eric's preemptive game of the year for 2025. Sorry, GTA 6.
It was never going to be GTA 6.
Yeah.
It was never. What else is coming? Death Stranding 2 is coming out in 2025.
Oh,
Man,
okay. Yeah, okay. Now we're talking.
Now we're talking. Freaky little puppet. Tiny little Freako sitting on the character's shoulder. Dragon Quest Builders is coming to PC. Congratulations, Nadia.
Mazel tov to Nadia.
Mazel tov.
Does that mean 3 is coming? Oh, man.
I don't know, maybe. I think it's been pretty successful over the years, if anything.
It's got a couple million each, so I don't see why not. I don't see why not.
Kind of mid Dragon Quest Monsters game has been pretty successful in Japan.
Is it mid? I think it's very good. I played it.
You like it a lot?
It's a hell of a lot better than Pokemon Fucked Up and Stupid. Like I can actually like play it. Sorry, I know they're good games. I just want them to fix it. I want Pokemon to be
You're
fixed.
on a roll today.
I blanked. I don't know what to. Pokemon Stupid. That's the only thing my father would say.
Blizzard's new boss is Johanna Faries. Tencent isn't buying Dungeons and Dragons, Solarian says.
Good for them.
Embracer continues its swath of destruction through the games industry by canceling a Deus Ex game and resulting in the loss of around 90 jobs at Eidos Montreal. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is getting a state of play on February 6th. And finally, Carl Weathers has died. He was 76. Rest in
R.I.P.
peace, Carl Reed.
Gone way too soon.
Gone way too soon. As for the longer encounters, we have an interesting release this week. Granblue Fantasy Relink, which is, I think somebody rather hyperbolically said, Granblue Fantasy Relink is what if Final Fantasy 16 but good?
Ow.
On the flip side,
Wow.
the reviews have been kind of all over the place. It does look really pretty. I did get a code for it. I'm curious, any interest in the audience or this panel in playing Granblue Fantasy Relink?
I talked about the demo a couple weeks back, and some of y'all thought my comparison was weird to Exo Primal. That just says that y'all haven't played Exo Primal. But it is like I'm both surprised and not surprised by how popular it is, because it is a really pretty adaptation of Granblue Fantasy, the mobile game, which people have been playing and playing in droves over here in the West, even though
Yeah.
there's not like an official English release as far as I know, but there's ways, there are means. But the having that story in a not gotcha form is already really good, and then you add in the fact that you can do 4-player co-op and each character is really specialized. It's kind of like Monster Hunter in that they all have the ways that they fight and the weapons that they use, but it's also almost Overwatchy, MOBA-y in the way that they have like very individual designs about the things they do and how they fight and stuff like that. I'm not surprised it's taking off, but also like the numbers that were out there on Steam of just many more people playing it than stuff like, Persona or Suicide Squad or things like that. It was really cool to see. I do think that game is a sleeper in some ways. I'm not saying it's like legendarily incredible or anything, but after playing that demo, I was like, oh, I need to check this game out when I've got some time, especially if you have like a co-op party. It seems really ideal for that.
Lance Hart says, releasing next to Like a Dragon, Persona, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was terrible timing. I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Granblue Fantasy has a huge following in Japan. It has historically been a little harder to play here in the US. You had to play it in like a browser as opposed to on mobile games and stuff.
There's not like an official version of it, so yeah, you have to do some workarounds.
Yeah. So,
if I'm not mistaken, wasn't like Final Fantasy Xvius the answer to that?
I mean, a lot of games are trying to be
Fair.
Granblue Fantasy. I can name quite a few of them, some of which I've actually played.
A lot of them are just trying to be fake Grand Order, and that's like FGO is huge. It is frighteningly big.
Huge. Granblue Fantasy Relink. It's trying to do a little bit of I would argue, a little bit of a League of Legends, expand the franchise into different mediums, different genres and such. But it's a little bit of a trickier ask here in the US just because the basis of the extreme mobile popularity isn't here. So it's a lesser known game, but there's no denying that this is a beautiful game. Eric, didn't you play the fighting game of Granblue Fantasy at PAX one year?
Oh, I
with Dustin Wong.
Did I review it? Or did I might have reviewed it for somewhere. But I did also, I had some it was like a panel or something where it was who can beat Justin Wong or something like that. It's a cool game. That fighting game is actually fairly popular. I wouldn't be surprised to see it announced as one of the main stage games at EVO this year, because they just had Versus Rising come out. It's very beginner friendly. It's like very much built for newcomers to fighting games to like pick up and mess around with. And yeah, I think your comparison to League of Legends is very apt, because I think a lot of companies are looking at both increasing regulation of things like gacha and loot boxes and means of monetization that they have, used for a long time, but also just increasing shifts in the ways that people play games and consume games, that they are looking for alternative methods of not shifting their income base, but expanding it, like trying to diversify the appeal, because League of Legends is huge, but there were a lot of people who don't play League of Legends but did watch Arcane on Netflix, right? And they got really into like Jinx and Vi and those characters because of Arcane. So now if Project L comes out and those people are like, oh, well, I don't really like a MOBA, but if Jinx is in a fighting game, I'll try that out. Like, now you're kind of getting different market segments.
I like her theme. I don't know anything about I just like all the League of Legends characters' themes.
But that's kind of the weird asterisk on this, is that Riot obviously just had massive layoffs, and part of that was shutting down its Riot Forge section, which was their third-party publishing arm. So maybe it's just a case of that wasn't working out, wasn't doing what they were hoping it would, and they're going to look for something else. But I do think a lot of companies, they want that multimedia franchise, right? They want what Sonic has. You look at like Sonic, which is now both a huge video game franchise and a huge media property with, Jim Carrey coming back for Sonic 3 as like this big headline. You have Mario, which is now becoming a multimedia franchise. Pokemon arguably has been for a long time. They want that because that just prints money in a way that just a video game franchise doesn't. And so I think a lot of companies are trying to figure out what properties they have that can do that and how they get that there.
It's funny because I was having a conversation with somebody about Nintendo, and we were discussing whether or not the Switch 2, when it's inevitably announced, will have some sort of interesting gimmick to it, because that's been Nintendo's MO for quite a while. And I observed that the GameCube was actually a very conventional console, aside from its weird shape, because it was just trying to play the power game. But Nintendo realized they couldn't win that game, so then they started going for... They struck out into the blue ocean, as Iwata famously referred to it. And that's why we got things like the Wii and the DS and the Wii U and arguably the Switch. The Switch was a blue ocean play. People think of it as very conventional now. It was not conventional in 2016 to do a hybrid dedicated handheld. It was quite the risk at that time. But I think Nintendo now has changed. I think they have returned from the blue ocean. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I think Nintendo has realized that they have some of the most powerful IP in the world. And specifically Mario and Pokemon. And they're just going to go all in on that. And you're going to see that over the years. They don't need a gimmick anymore. They don't need to be in the blue ocean. They got the characters. It's all about the characters.
They just
now.
need the good
It's all
games.
about franchises and sequels unto the ending of the world.
Well, if they can give me more sequels like Tears of the Kingdom, give me 50.
Let's go. Be lit. Maybe make a good Pokemon game in there somewhere too.
Well, that's
if you have the time.
Take Pokemon and save it.
Take Pokemon,
Indeed.
please.
please. Oh my God. Also, there was a state of play this past week. Not too much in the way of strong RPG announcements. A lot of Hideo Kojima in this one. We got a deep dive into Death Stranding 2, which I think was definitely the game of the show, so to speak, if there is such a thing.
If I can bring one other game up as possible game of the presentation, it is the year of Shadow the Hedgehog, my friends.
Boy, here we go.
Sonic Shadow Generations.
I think
this
world this cursed world is finally ready for a Shadow 06 retelling.
There you go.
We deserve this in every good and bad
a Shadow
way.
the Hedgehog one. Like that seems to be like the core of that game, and
it's gonna be fun as hell. You're all not ready. You are not ready.
God, Shadow's gonna cap somebody in a movie theater on the screen.
We're gonna see a child die in the next movie. A little child gets shot by the
No
US
one's
government.
ready for that except for Sonic fans.
Shadow the Hedgehog.
Imagine Jim Carrey in that scene. Maria. Oh.
Shadow the Hedgehog came out in November 2005. So it was about a year before Persona 3 was released in Japan. And we're in a Persona 3 renaissance. We're in a Shadow renaissance. The Shadow-sans.
The Shadow Sans has always been. We have always been in the Shadow Sans.
What happens when you give a hedgehog a gun? Well, you're about to find out.
Well, it can't hold the gun. It's got those little paws that are just can't wrap around the trigger.
The hedgehogs evolved to be able to hold guns specifically.
God had to choose one animal to evolve and take care of us humans, and it chose. He chose the hedgehog. Here's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald.
Even though it wasn't heavily featured, even though RPGs weren't heavily featured in the state of play, if there were one game that I'm definitely keeping my eye on that might be tangentially interesting to our audience specifically, it's Stellar Blade, which looks big platinum vibes.
Yep,
it does
with this one. I'm digging it. I like the look of the action. It looks like a lot of fun. It doesn't seem to be an RPG. It seems to be much more of a straightforward action game, but in terms of vibes and aesthetic, I think it would fit very well for the Axe of the Blood God audience. So definitely something I'm keeping my eye on. I mentioned I put it when I ranked my favorite games shown during the stream. I put Stellar Blade at like number 2, and Mike Williams appeared out of nowhere to be like, "Oh, interesting. Wasn't expecting you to hit that one."
That's how you summon Mike Williams. Have an opinion on a game that he thinks is mid.
I almost feel like Mike is watching me like he's a sociologist, and he's like taking notes on my like game opinions. Oh, Cat likes this. Interesting. Curious. Like he's like he's looking at me like some kind of exotic specimen or something.
The Axe of the Blood God National Geographic special.
He also
he's a good narrator for that.
He appears when you say certain things. He just appears out of the ether to be like,
out of the blue. The wild cat seems to be interested in Stellar Blade. She's circling it warily and poking at it. Interesting. No, I didn't really think that she would be into this one. But in the meantime, it is streaming season as all of the different outlets or all the different platforms start to set their agendas for 2024. We're now officially on Nintendo Direct Watch. It could be happening as soon as this week. It could be happening next week. It could be happening the week after. Who knows? So
these are the days I don't miss working for games media and not having to just kind of be on the edge and waiting. Can I go to sleep? Can I take a poop? No, you gotta be on Nintendo Watch.
That's true. I don't get to poop until Nintendo does a direct.
We work from our phones.
I, for one, am ready for them to finally announce that damn Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War remake.
Yeah, let's stop teasing already.
That's been rumored for like 2 years at this point.
Only 2. A lot more than that.
You want to talk about fatigue? Fire Emblem fatigue is real, which is too bad because I love Fire Emblem. I love it with my tiny heart.
I love the new game. Which one? What was it called again?
Nadia, you and me, ride or die. Love Engage. Let's go.
Engage was great. It was so fun. It had fun couples too.
They'll announce the remake, and people will be like, "Where's the Three Houses sequel? I want a Three Houses sequel."
Yeah, where's Fire Emblem 4 Houses?
Yeah, where's this like Fire Emblem 3
Fire Emblem
houses?
2 Houses squared.
I would love to see what kind of bizarre title that Square Enix could come up. Fire Emblem 3 Houses 1.1835 Reloaded.
Birth by Death.
X2 Birth by Death.
Resurrection Rebirth.
Resurrection memes. You want to talk about a game fueled by memes? Fire Emblem 3 Houses. Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
People love Sad Boy very, very much. Lion Guy. Derek. Dimitri, thank you.
Yeah. I love Dimitri.
He's great.
So does the internet.
Yeah. Well, Edelgard is still beloved.
Edelgard's still,
the 3 house leaders are still beloved, so.
If you don't mind me dipping a toe into Xbox discourse, do y'all think that Xbox is going to announce that it's basically going third party this month?
That's going.
And what would follow to that?
Oh, yeah, because like Hi-Fi Rush going to like.
Yeah, Xbox fans are having a real one over Hi-Fi Rush potentially coming to Switch.
Xbox fans are do it for the drama, all right? They cause problems to
Shut
cause
up, Sony
problems,
Pony.
okay? They're the people who are like, I hate drama in my life, and then consistently start it. Like they are. Oh man, I swear, every time I hear what's the ridiculous gaming discourse this week, it's out of Xbox specifically. It is wild to me.
The Xbox kids are starting shit again.
They got Pentiment. Go play Pentiment. You've got it. Go play it. Like Todd Howard made Starfield so you would just play that game forever and not start discourse on social media.
There was a new Starfield patch that really enhanced the lighting recently. I hope they keep working on that game and adding a lot because I wouldn't mind going back to it. I don't know. I think Xbox has some good games coming up between Indiana Jones and Hellblade 2. I think Hellblade 2 looks interesting. Yeah, I'll probably play that one. But all right, time now. We're rolling into the tavern, tucking in by the fire. Ken, I see that you're playing Suicide Squad.
Suicide Squad.
I was playing Suicide Squad. I think I might be done playing Suicide Squad. So it's not since I guess probably near have I had a game that I love everything about other than playing it as much as I do about Suicide Squad, because I'm not like a DC sicko, I say, as I have my Green Arrow tattoo, but like I am like reasonably invested in a lot of those characters and like trying to see that like how different teams and different creatives kind of like do their own riffs on each of them. And I love Harley Quinn, so I was like, okay, cool. I'll check it out, even if it's apparently not that great. Um, I was no, I wasn't surprised per se, but like I was immediately overwhelmed by the amount of like live service glut that game has in a time where I feel like trying to get into that market specifically just feels very ill-advised, because everyone's kind of settling in on their own game for that sort of like that occupies that space in their life, and to try and get in on that and also be as mid as everything in that game is just like, man, it I feel for that team that has spent 9 years now. Arkham Knight was 2015, right? Sounds about right. They have spent almost a decade working on a game that felt like it's chasing trends from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That like would have felt like, kind of hitting when the iron's hot right after Arkham Knight, as opposed to almost 10 years later when that market is so saturated and it doesn't really do anything to kind of, make itself special in that front. Because like the things that are actually interesting about it are all the not light surface shit, like the story and the writing and all of that is actually really solid. But it's also like it's very floaty and flimsy for a shooter in a way that does not jive with me. Because it never gets quite to like Arkham levels of like the sort of like precision that those games had in combat that I think makes it like, I mean, people make jokes about how they're basically rhythm games, which sure, but they also like they were snappy. They were very, they didn't have to be a platinum game, but they were like fun to play. And this, I feel like I would maybe get more out of it if I was playing with friends, but I also can't find anybody that actually wants to play it. And maybe that just says more about it than anything else. So I kind of put it away. Which bums me out because like I keep scrolling through TikTok and the algorithm is like trained to feed me DC Comics shit. So I kind of seen a lot of the big scenes. I'm like, man, that would have been great to see playing that game, but I just don't want to.
So Suicide Squad, so interesting trajectory for it. Heavy negative hype heading into it. And then there was hey, actually the Suicide Squad game's pretty fun. And now people are like, it's actually not that fun. And I have to say, if we're talking about fatigue, God, I really feel the Suicide Squad fatigue. We've had 3 movies. As good as the Harley Quinn show is on HBO, it's basically a Suicide Squad show.
Yeah.
Now we're getting a game. And I'm sorry, as great as Harley Quinn is, she's not good enough to carry this like cast of C-tier DC losers. I mean, it's the
King
Shark
Shark's
guy's
great,
the
though.
Shark guy's
I
funny.
love King Shark.
You come in here swinging your 2 dicks around.
The Shark guy's funny. Deadshot is whatever. And then there's just a lot of dudes. It's just a bunch of dudes. Who cares? Yeah. Harley Quinn's great.
I'm going to make everybody angry with one statement. Okay, first of all, yes, the Harley Quinn show is fantastic. No argument there. The only DC thing that I really like, and I've discovered this while traveling, is Teen Titans Go. It's always hilarious.
I've heard good things about Teen Titans
It
Go.
always makes me crack up. And
the movie is also really good too.
The movie, there's a really cursed scene in the movie where they have to reenact Batman's death again because they screwed up the timeline or whatever. So they teleport in front of Bruce Wayne, young Bruce Wayne and his parents. They push his parents into the alley. You hear machine gun fire, and you see little Bruce's eyes track his mother's body as it falls. And you don't see this. It's a G-rated movie. And they just kind of smile and get the thumbs up and teleport out. It's just like, wow. Like, the Batman parents are dead thing has been beaten to death, but that is just, like, brilliant. That just blew my mind.
Like DC is, I was thinking about this the other day because I feel personally tired by DC, but that's mostly because I'm tired by the like post Snyder DC, where I do think Suicide Squad is caught up in that because a lot of the DC stuff, like you go back to Batman the Animated Series, Justice League, Justice League Unlimited, Young Justice, early Teen Titans, like I like a lot of that stuff. It's really, really
Yeah,
good.
me
I've
too.
gone back and watched old Justice League, or even like not just Justice League Unlimited, but the original one with the Wonder Twin powers activate and all that. And like, it's still good. It's still really
Yeah.
fun to watch. But there is something that turned in like the late 2000s where suddenly DC was a different franchise, a different
Yeah.
vehicle, and all the things they do nowadays just don't really do much for me outside of I like Harley Quinn and I like that my something with Superman, like the very Saturday morning
Yeah.
anime take on Superman. But
Oh, that's cute. Yeah.
everything else is just like I wish they would get back to what made a lot of that stuff feel almost Avatar: The Last Airbender in terms of it's an animated show, but it's clearly for kids, but it's like for older kids who are kind of dealing with some stuff right now. Like they're growing up, they're learning, they want like deeper emotional themes to deal with. Because that stuff's really, really good. It's really solid, and I would love to see more of it. But I don't like a lot of this modern DC that we
So
have.
if I can push back on that a little bit, because I think yes, like there are certain projects that definitely feel like they're embedded in like the Snyderverse vibe, but I also think that DC, more so than Marvel specifically, is doesn't feel as beholden to the trappings of what they put in movie theaters, because I feel like Marvel has had a problem for however long the MCU's been going around, where everything kind of feels very much like very homogenous in terms of vibe and in terms of art style and in terms of visual flair and sort of like the presentations of like okay, like you look at Marvel Spider-Man, the Insomniac games, like they clearly retooled that character's face to look like Tom Holland.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there are just like little things like that that add up to Marvel feeling more homogenous than ever. Where it feels like
Yeah.
because the DC movies have not been the runaway success, it does feel like DC as a whole feels just more varied in terms of tone, in terms of style, in terms of storylines. And you look at things, okay, like yes, there's Harley Quinn, there's the Superman anime, there's even like stuff. Even by the end, some of the stuff they were doing at CW, like Legends of Tomorrow, like there's just like a distinct. Okay, we're giving creatives the license to play with these characters, but like really come up with your own vibe, your own story. So I think in that way, I feel like I'm not necessarily burnt out on DC as more I am like you said, like a very specific vibe that certain projects go. And I think Suicide Squad, despite having like I think I don't think people are talking enough about how good the writing and the acting is in that game, because I feel like I again like I like everything about that game other than playing it. It's like I feel like I might at this point just go watch all the cutscenes on YouTube.
On YouTube. Yeah.
Because
That's a
yeah,
great
like
headline, by the way. Did you use that headline?
which one?
I
I
like everything about Suicide Squad except playing it.
that I've been thinking about it, so yeah, probably
That's a
will
free
sometime
headline,
next week.
dude. Just use
Yeah.
it.
So yeah, I think DC is in a weird place for sure, but I also think it just seems to have like more potential than Marvel does right now, because Marvel is so hamstrung by its success.
Right.
Although like I think the way the MCU is kind of falling apart right now is probably going to give some people license to maybe try something new soon.
God, I hope
Um,
so. Guardians of the Galaxy
Same.
was really good. That video game was fantastic.
I I I feel superhero fatigue like everybody else. That said, I actually have optimism about James Gunn's DCU
Yeah.
because I think that it's going to be the reboot that Marvel desperately needs at this
Yeah.
point. And everything he said about Superman and his like approach to the overall construction of it is sort of music to my ears. I think he's
Yeah.
doing it all right so far. So I actually have some optimism about it. As for DC video games, I mean, I love Batman the animated series, and in some ways, like there's a real spiritual connection from Suicide Squad to Batman the animated series. But Suicide Squad as a thing, just as much as I love Harley Quinn, just not it's a hard no for me. But
It definitely lives or dies by which characters they have in that
For sure.
group.
Eric, you've been playing Linda3 fan translation. What does this
Linda
say?
Cube again. Let's go.
Linda
Okay.
Cube. Linda
So,
Cube. Okay.
Earlier this week, it was just a normal night. I was like hanging out, didn't really know what I wanted to play. Had
Let's set the
huge
scene here.
yeah, I got to set the scene. There's like, I lit some candles, put music on. No, it was, I was looking on Twitter and I saw a tweet that was just going around from people that I respect their opinions on games, especially old games, all posting about Linda³ again, English fan translation out now. Bunch of fan translators, including someone named Kargadin, had put out a fan translation for this game, and the way I saw it described as one of the most important post-Mother RPGs ever made. So I was like, okay, PS1 cult classic RPG post-Mother, love this.
It's giving Mother.
It's giving post-Mother. And so I was like, I'm gonna go check this out. I am floored by what I have found, because it is essentially it's by Alpha System. It was originally for the PC Engine, then remade for PS1 and for Saturn. It is very of that age of, you can tell this has like PC Engine DNA in it, down to the fact that there are like almost Lunar style anime FMVs that play at big story moments, which just makes me very nostalgic. But the actual story is about this guy named Ken, who has a childhood friend named Linda, and this is in scenario A, which, by the way, there are 3 scenarios, and my understanding is that each one is radically different and gets really weird, so who's to say? But he is supposed to, they're on this planet, Neo Kenya, that is going to get hit by a meteor in 8 years and just die, and everybody knows this, and so they're all getting ready to migrate off the planet and go travel the stars and find a new home. Meanwhile, an Ark has appeared, like Noah's Ark. And it's got a commandment outside that says, bring me 2 of every animal and a male and female pilot to send this thing off into space to preserve the human race. And so Linda, his childhood friend, decides that she's going to be the female pilot, and you kind of get forced very Undertale-y into being the male pilot, the counterpart to Linda. And literally it's a monster catching RPG where you're going around catching different male and female versions of all these weird, messed up versions of animals, like very mutated and grotesque rats and dogs and sharks and things like that. And there's a seasonal thing where you spend enough time walking around the overworld or in and out of towns, and time will pass and different animals will appear in different places. All the while, there is a bizarre, mind-twisting story happening in the background about people who dress up like Santa all year round, and genetic splicing, and memory gaps, and it is so weird, but so compelling. And I maybe don't love the story all that much. I don't think it's like at the end of the day, a very I think it's just a very novel story, but the mechanics around having to hunt down these monsters, go on these expeditions, using them for different parts. So like deciding to take them apart for, like you can literally take them to a butcher and have them like piece apart a rat to see if there's like a ring inside that you can go sell to a merchant. Like maybe it ate a ring that you can sell to the merchant, or you can turn it into meat, but meat will spoil if the season changes. And so you have to be careful about when you get meat from an animal. And also you don't want to eat like certain meat from certain animals and certain seasons and stuff like that. It's like a very dense and impressive RPG in its systems. And everything about this is just, Are you tired of boring standard RPGs? They're just about some dude on a quest to save the world. Well, here's one where you're just in the weirdest situation of having to get male and female of every animal to board this ark, and then you learn the power to turn into a dolphin boy and shoot out an echo star scream because you brought them back to the ark, and you're like, I know how to turn into a dolphin now, and it's so cool.
That sounds awesome. I gotta play it. Is that on PC only? I guess this is a translation.
So it's a fan translation. So yeah, obviously the means of which
is it a fan translation of the PlayStation version?
The PlayStation version. The PlayStation version. Which is significant in some ways, and so I would recommend. I've been playing it alongside. There was an old, I think it's a Something Awful Let's Play. It's on the Let's Play archives. Remember those? What a
Yeah.
strange relic of the internet.
I was
But
talking about those just recently. There was also that was another fixture of Talking Time. Was the Let's Play forum.
Let's Play was a very big thing
It was
back then.
fun.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me like doing a huge digression for like one hot second,
Do
I
it.
was remembering just recently how in the days before replays in StarCraft, people would literally take JPEGs and construct sort of a flow chart that explained how a game went and with the build orders and everything that would load slowly. And it looked cool, but it was so primitive in the way that they did battle reports until actual replays came around. And that's what early Let's Plays remind me of. Anyway.
That was how I experienced Danganronpa for the first time. Was I read the Let's Play archive of it, and then Ken got really mad
They
at
were
me and said that I had
genuinely
to play it.
hilarious. They were funny.
And I recommend the Linda³ one, especially because not only is it helpful for certain parts where you're like, what do I need to do? Because there are times where the game doesn't really communicate that you just need to go level or go get more animals to put in the arc for the next story beat to follow. But also the person who did the Let's Play archive not only uploaded all of the cutscenes and stuff at the time, but uploaded the PC Engine version of the cutscenes, which are different in very interesting ways, and a ton of concept art. And oh my gosh, the concept art for Linda³ is incredible. It's really good. It's like a slice of the Akira era anime that you see it and you're like, oh, this is like very of a time that I just want to like immerse myself in. And that story goes places. I'm going to say that big old content warning on various different things that usually comes with when you say like, oh, it's a weird, strange mother-inspired RPG in the vein of your Omoris and things like that. That, yeah, maybe tack on all the requisite content warnings that you would have for those onto this one as well. But it just is fascinating in a way that I don't always see from modern RPGs. I feel like I grouse a lot about how I'm tired of the prestige game and stuff like that, and I want games that force me to just engage more with their systems and engage more with their world. And Linda³ really does that. I love the way that I have to think about, okay, I'm going on an expedition. How are my dogs doing? How are, what animals do I need? How do I need to hunt them down? Where can I find them? What season is it? Do I have enough supplies? And it feels very involved in the moment in a way that not a lot of RPGs always do. So I really, really like it. And I'm glad that fan translators continue to do the excellent work of preserving these things, these pieces of history that we'd otherwise lose, because now I'm just down a rabbit hole of learning about Alpha System and its developers and its quiet little like influences in the background. There was an old Vita game, I think, that I saw that they had worked on that really surprised me, but also made me go, oh yeah, no, I could see the lineage. Orishika Tainted Bloodlines was one they worked on back in 2014, if any of you remember that one. Another Vita classic. So yeah, it's a really cool.
It's really good.
Yeah. It was really interesting. It was really unique and different. And so like Linda³, if you want that.
The Hardcore Gaming 101 description says Shoji Masuda was the scenario writer for the first two games in the PC Engine RPG series Tengai Makio. But having burnt out on creating standard Dragon Quest style games, he swore to create something truly unique. And together with Alpha Systems, he sure accomplished that with Linda³, a psycho thriller and hunting RPG that proves to be one of the most strangest and most bizarre role-playing games on the Saturn, if not ever. So it's great that we have fan translations for that one. Speaking of fan translations, I got Sakura Wars on my Saturn yesterday. We took a while, I got Sakura Wars on my Steam Deck yesterday.
I was going to say, you have a Saturn? Holy crap.
I mean, Saturns are surprisingly easy to get hold of, especially if you get an import one. But I got it on my Steam Deck. It took some tweaking, some like messing around with BIOS and everything, but I'm good to go. It's part of the Pantheon of the Blood God this month. I've never played Sakura Wars.
Same.
kind of. I'm sorry. I only played Sakura Wars 5, which came out on the Wii. That one was actually released here. I did not play the one that was basically a Muso game that Victor was kind of like out on. We did Victor month for Pantheon of the Blood God, and he had some interesting choices like Dot Hack Infection and Sakura Wars. But Sakura Wars, once upon a time, was a very big franchise in Japan for Sega. There's a Sakura Wars cafe and store in Japan where you could, like a cafe, there was tons of merch, tons of games in the series across multiple platforms. And it's less prominent now, but if you love that visual novel stuff, it's a good one. So I'm looking forward to playing it. Big 90s RPG vibes. Are you going to play it, Nadia?
Yeah, I'll be playing it. The only, as I was saying on the show, my only reference is Project Cross Zone 2. And probably the first one showed up there, but I was more into the Mega Man X stuff because they brought back Iris, and that was a total mindfuck for Zero. Good times.
And also, if you don't have a Steam Deck or are kind of worried about playing Sakura Wars, Victor Hunter set up a really very easy way to play it, and that's available over on the Discord. So, how about you, Eric? Are you going to play Sakura Wars?
Oh, I told Victor that if
he
Sakura
gave him
Wars,
his vow.
Yeah, if Sakura Wars won, I would play Sakura Wars. I know I'm not on every Pantheon, but I promised that if Sakura Wars won, I would be there. And even though February is going to be a very busy month for me, I will make time for Sakura Wars.
Yeah, I think that Sakura Wars can be a little chaser with certain other RPGs that are releasing this month. So I'm delaying my Persona 3 Reload playthrough because I want to focus on other RPGs that may be coming out this month, and also Sakura Wars, and also I'm still playing Infinite Wealth actually, which I'm really enjoying. It's really, really good. I'm in chapter 5 now. I just got Chitose on my team, and I'm just running around Hawaii with a bunch of with a motley crew of Japanese misfits, I suppose you could say. And the game goes down really easy. Ken, you played Infinite Wealth, right?
No, I did not. I took a blood oath to never play the Yakuza games, so I have not played that.
Really? Why? What's the blood oath?
Please explain the reason why.
So I love telling this story on podcasts.
Is it
so
like tattooed on you, like Yakuza?
I mean, it be at this point. So okay, I don't know if y'all know Blake Hester over at Game Informer. Very, very good friend of mine. And in 2016 or 17,
It's been that long.
Oh
my god.
He and I made a deal where I would play Yakuza 0 if he played Danganronpa 1. We both were playing it. I got 5 or 6 hours in. I was like, this game's it's fine. Like I was more into the soap opera of it than I was in the actual.
Great
like again, the game where like I like everything but other than playing it. He got a chapter in Danganronpa and was like, oh man, this is really good. I'm really enjoying this. He never touched it again. And if y'all don't know this about me, there are 2 things that you need to know about me. I don't forget anything, and I hold a grudge like nobody's business. And so, since he didn't play Danganronpa, I'm not playing Yakuza.
Top 10 anime betrayals.
I was gonna say, yeah, this is a story arc right here.
It's been years that this feud has lasted, and Ken just refuses to ever play Yakuza or Like a Dragon until
I'll be honest, I thought
is resolved.
I was gonna get a story about like someone in your family getting killed by the Japanese mafia. Like, I was like, oh, I understand.
Nothing. This is far more dramatic and far more blood.
I agree.
I have to say, this is a betrayal worthy of the Yakuza series. That is exactly.
It's really thematically appropriate. It's
new storyline dropped.
Ken's gonna pull his shirt off, and there's like a Monokuma back tattoo all the way down.
But it is fascinating to hear you like be so high on it, because I was sitting like as everyone was playing this game for review, I was being out of context, like having no context for all this stuff. Everyone that I've talked to seems to be very conflicted about this game. So like when reviews came out and they were glowing, I was like, huh, I guess my friends just hate joy or something.
Oh yeah.
I'm
Happens.
surprised by people who are like, I like a Dragon a lot better, the Yakuza Like a Dragon a lot better,
Mm.
because I think I like the story of Yakuza Like a Dragon a lot better. It's a lot more focused, has a clearer arc, but I like literally everything else about Infinite Wealth far more than I ever liked Yakuza Like a Dragon. A fine game, loved the stockholder stuff, but the dungeons and the pacing and balance of the battle system drove me nuts. And so Infinite Wealth I find infinitely more enjoyable to play on a moment-to-moment basis. And they really packed this thing with a lot of mini games, a lot of interesting things to do. And even if the story is less focused than, say, its predecessor, I do just really enjoy hanging out with these characters. I really love hanging out with Ichiban. I really enjoy Kiryu. I like them all. Even the cabbie, he's all right too. So it's good stuff. It's good. I'm gonna keep playing it. I'm gonna finish this one. I make my stake. You vow never to play these games. I vow to finally finish a Yakuza game that is not Dead Souls. The only Yakuza game I've ever finished. Weirdly,
Perfectly balanced.
perfectly balanced as all things
As all
should
things
be.
should be.
Nadia, what have you been playing?
I've been playing a game for consultation that I can't talk too much about yet, but I'm just finished that. It's out of my hair, and I'm just kind of winding down a bit by playing Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster on the Switch because I never got around to finishing that. And I just did the opera, and I've warmed up to how they changed the opera a little bit.
You like the lyrics?
The lyrics, I know they changed to be more accurate to what they originally were. I like the singing, is what I think I'm saying. Like, the guy who does Draco is just completely off his nut. He's just giving it his all. And I just love the remixed music in general. I think, other than the Chocobo theme, which I don't know what happened there, but there is, like, kind of an extended theme to each of the songs that they have going on in this game. So I just love to kind of sit back and listen to what's new. Like, the battle for the Esper on the hill in Narsh, I had no idea that there was like that leitmotif of Terra's theme going on until they really emphasized it in the remixed version of the music. So, great so far. But what I really did, besides, when I was playing that game that I had to review, consult on rather, I just kind of plowed through show tunes and soundtracks and stuff. So, shout out to Phantom of the Opera, Tommy, The Wall, Rent. I swore I'd never listen to Rent again, but I listened to Rent again. Yeah, shout out to all the soundtracks and all the Final Fantasies. Thank you.
I love Final Fantasy VI, as you know. I've been thinking about replaying it at some point. I don't know if I want to replay it on Pixel Remaster because
It's a very good remaster. Like, it doesn't have the extra stuff, but 6's extra stuff wasn't great to begin with. They treated it really well, and it's good to have the option to do auto battles and to, I don't know if you can turn off encounters, I don't remember, but you can double experience in Gil.
I think all of the quality of life stuff is great, and I don't know how I feel about the soundtrack because I think I prefer the original soundtrack. I know you can switch to the original one, and I think the graphical improvements hugely benefit Final Fantasy V, but I don't know how I feel about them in Final Fantasy VI. They feel a little too clip arty to me.
I know, they struck a good balance, I think. Like,
Yeah.
I was looking at Sabin's kind of the effects that go behind his Phoenix dance, wherever the localization is in that one, and it just looks pretty good. Like, it all looks very good. It's all very well suited for HD platforms. Like, taking those old CRT graphics and just kind of transporting them as they were would just not come out as good.
Yeah, so I think the upshot of this is I do plan to play Final Fantasy VI at some point. I just don't know if it's going to be the Pixel remaster or not. Because I'd be interested to revisit it. I haven't played. I remember when we launched Blood God, Nadia, we were streaming a playthrough of 6, and you were walking me through a lot of things.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I haven't played it since the late 90s.
Wow.
So it's been a long time. So it's one of those situations. We were talking about Final Fantasy IX last night in the Pantheon. I would like to revisit 6, knowing everything I do about RPGs now,
Right.
and see what I think of it, because I was very new to the genre at the time.
Would
Like,
you want to have the more complete translation? I do at least recommend that, because it does preserve Wolseley's charm while also making things. Wolseley himself will say, like, I had to chop off half that translation. So I would honestly go ahead, and there are versions where you can play the SNES game with the improved translation. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, honestly. I feel like my first time ever playing 6, I didn't sufficiently explore the world of Ruin. And
Yeah.
I think it would be really fun to see all of those stories and see everything that's happening there, and really dig into it. But, time and toothless sighting.
Toothless sighting, yeah.
I have a lot of time, and I'm very focused on new experiences, and so it's hard for me to revisit an old one, but I think there's a lot of merit in going back to 6. All right. That's it for the tavern. Nadia, take us home.
So how do you like that blanket I have back there? Not bad, eh? It's a pretty good blanket.
Yeah.
When I was cleaning up and just kind of like, putting the blanket there, I found an old pair of earrings that were very nice, actually. Like, they're the Animal Crossing, the Nook Leaf. You know the one. And I was like, oh, I'd like to wear these. But then I remembered I don't have piercings. I don't have holes. I don't have piercings. And here's why. When I was 4, my parents got my ears pierced for me, and I had studs. And, the studs have that, little butterfly backing that keeps everything in the earlobe. When I was 6, I took the backing to some earring that I was wearing at the time, and I pushed it into my earlobe. Like, I pushed the whole thing into my earlobe, and it got covered with, like, skin and scabbing, and the doctor had to cut open my ear to take it out. So,
Ow.
I never really, I basically let my earring holes close after that, and I just never really wore earrings ever again. But the moral of the story is I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, I've never seen anyone do this. Like, how did you do it? And I said, I was just playing with it. Like, I liked, when I was a kid, I liked to play with things that were, like, of textures that I found pleasing, and I just found the texture of that pleasing, and I pushed it, and just, yeah, back then they didn't really diagnose kids for autism, but I'm probably on the spectrum. But the point is, I cannot wear those really nice earrings because I am traumatized because I was a stupid idiot when I was 6 years old, and God, my mom was pissed at me.
So did you say that you pierced your ears by yourself just because you enjoyed playing with a thing?
No, that would track, but no, what I'm saying is that my parents pierced my ears for me when I was 4. We were walking in the mall, and they said, how'd you like to have your ears pierced? I said, sure. I had no idea what the hell that was. So I got my ears pierced, and I'm like, ow, that fucking hurts like hell. And then I just, like, used to play with things a lot when I was a kid. Like, I was a fidgety little thing, and I kind of noticed, like, oh, I kind of like the way the butterfly feels. It's, like, sharp. And I liked it so much. I played with it too much. I pushed it into my ear, and it's like, it's like what parents warn you masturbation will be like. If you masturbate too much, your hands will fall off. But no one warned me about, like, your earrings. Don't play with your earrings because you'll infect your ears, and your doctor will have to cut them open. And yeah, so
Okay, Ken, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Nadia, I have given a lot of thought to getting my ears pierced, especially like after my hair went away. I was like, I need something going on up here. But thank you for reminding me to not do that.
Well, I mean, it's fine if you don't pierce your own ear.
Well, that's part of it. But I'm also like a fidgety person, especially like since I grew a beard. I'm constantly like doing this. So I feel like if I had something else going on up here, I would just suddenly I start playing. I don't touch my ears most days, but then like,
oh my god,
I would start.
I had completely forgotten about all of this until I saw those earrings, and I'm like, oh, why don't I wear these? Oh, right. There's a trauma. Okay, I remember that trauma quite well.
We need something larger than a pit. This is more than a pit.
Somebody said an abyss.
An abyss. Okay,
Nadia's this is the thing, in the SpongeBob movie where they have the rock bottom and that eel just comes up and like bites the thing.
Yeah.
Sinks forever.
Nadia grabbed the wheel and just drove the bus straight into the abyss. We're in a chasm. We're still falling.
The Mariana Trench of nostalgia.
It's like that minecart in Donkey Kong Country where you just fall into the pit. Yeah, we've fallen. We've still fallen. The Mariana Trench of pits. Yeah, it's funny, Ken, because I was also thinking about piercing my ears this year. I never got my ears pierced for various reasons growing up. So I was like, this is it. I'm finally doing it this year. I'm getting my ears pierced. And thank you, Nadia.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that.
That's a New Year's resolution we do not have to fulfill.
Indeed.
I took it off your list. You
I'll
should owe
see
me.
it.
And that's it for this week's episode of Acts of the God. Thank you so much for listening. I've been your host, Kat Bailey. Ken, thank you so much for joining us. Where can we find you?
You can find me Monday through Friday at Kotaku.com. You can find me on Twitter at ShepardCDR. And you can find me... It's supposed to have been bi-weekly, but it hasn't been in almost over a year at this point. But I do a show with this guy over here called Normandy FM, a retrospective podcast where we go through Games Book Club style. And I swear to God, we're gonna play Nier again soon.
We are going to finish Nier. It will happen.
We were supposed to be like almost done by now, I think. In when we originally, because we took we had to take the 6 months off because everything happened.
Yes,
and then more stuff happened at the end of the year. So we're just like halfway through what we're supposed to be done with.
We'll
certainly
get
supposed to be done
there.
with Replicant by there.
Yeah, we'll be done with Nier by the end of 2024 for sure.
That
for
is
sure.
a bold fucking statement. I don't know if we can. I don't know. If
we can do it because we're supposed
We're
to
gonna
be done
try.
by June. We're supposed to be done by June with all of it. So like we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
And also, you had your PAX East panel accepted.
Yes. Yeah, congratulations.
You're doing a cool panel about video games in the South.
Yes.
Ken?
Oh,
I'm
sweet.
doing that with Kate Sanchez. It's basically about like trying to exist in the video game industry when you live in like a rural area as opposed to in one of the 3 cities where anything happens. And while I'm a New York transplant now, I did live in bumfuck nowhere, Georgia for 30 years. So I have a lot of insight into what it's like trying to do anything in video games when everything is very far away. And then we got this other one with Eric.
Yeah,
And
if you
Eric
want
also
to.
got his video game Tinder one accepted.
Yeah, so Ken and I are running it back for Video Game Tinder again. I am once again concocting a bunch of fake dating app profiles for various video game heartthrobs, and our live panel will swipe on them. This year we have Ken, of course. We have Anya Combs, Kate Sanchez, Jenny Wyndham, and Ben Starr. So if you can guess who I'm gonna put on one of those dating profiles, you could probably guess.
Yeah, just spoiler.
Is it Sonic?
No.
Sonic Shadow.
And we submitted a panel for Acts of the Blood God, but it's on hold.
That keeps happening.
We've been waiting. It can't keep happening.
Contact your local congressman.
I have been in touch with PAX East, and they do seem interested in having us there. I'd like to go. So
Yeah. I'm going either way, so.
Stay tuned. I pitched a problematic faves Baldur's Gate 3 panel, which I hope gets accepted at some point.
Calling Asterion.
Indeed.
Oh, hello.
All right. We're headed over to the post show now, hanging out with the Stars of Destiny, which I'm looking at the channel right now. We got Anthrax Bees, we got Flashback 2012, JB, Kara 313. Kara, welcome. I think you're a new face. Sardin, Spyrus, Wah, and Zubat, man. It's gonna be a little party. Gonna hang out, chat a little bit more. You can go and join the party if you are a member of the Stars of Destiny on patreon.com/BloodGodPod. All right. In the meantime, though, we'll be back next week, as always, talk more about the genre that we love. But for Nadia, Eric, Ken, and myself, thanks for listening, and happy adventuring.